Whatever you do, make sure you visit ashkicking.com for your home fragrance, health, and beauty needs. Quality products at a great price.
Hi, you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation. Woo! Hey.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? More and more news continues to pour in, and it ain't good news when it comes to this whole Gennady Golovkin situation. I just reported that the WBC, they recently just approved Gary Spike O'Sullivan as an opponent for Gennady Golovkin. But the bad news is many sources are reporting that this fight may very well be canceled. Boxing Scene and other websites are reporting because this fight is so close to the date of May 5th, they're not going to have time, or they're fearing they won't have enough time to promote another opponent for Gennady Golovkin. So because of the opponents that Gennady Golovkin is trying to handpick, like Jaime Munguia and Gary Spike O'Sullivan, because of those picks, now the promoters and networks, they're forced to move the fight from Las Vegas, which the fight would have most likely been at the T-Mobile Arena when it was against Canelo, to now moving it to StubHub in Carson, California, an arena that only holds 9,000 seats. And on top of that, the fight obviously will be downgraded further from pay-per-view to a live telecast on HBO, which obviously is a no-brainer because we already know Golovkin versus O'Sullivan or Munguia would do terrible pay-per-view numbers if Golovkin versus David Lemieux didn't do the best numbers. Now, once again, I told you guys, when Canelo Alvarez got suspended out of this fight, I told you guys this was not only bad for Canelo, it was also bad for Gennady Golovkin. And now you guys are seeing why. You see, because Gennady Golovkin, he had some options. He had some options when Canelo pulled out. Matter of fact, he had too many options. That was actually the problem. Because a lot of those options consist of lions and sharks. And coincidentally, they happen to be mandatories for Gennady Golovkin. Now, you would think when you look at Golovkin's track record, he would prefer to fight a mandatory, because after all, he has before. I mean, Dominic Wade was a mandatory. Golovkin never hesitated to fight Dominic Wade. Willie Monroe was a mandatory. Golovkin did not hesitate to fight Willie Monroe. So what are the difference between the mandatories back then and the mandatories today? Well, one of the mandatories you guys are looking at his picture right now. This is an Olympian, Sergey Derenyevchenko. He was a bronze medalist in the World Amateur Boxing Championships. He's a Ukrainian fighter, undefeated mandatory for Gennady Golovkin. He has a resume, or he has a pedigree similar to Golovkin's. So if you were asking the question, why would Golovkin be willing to face Gary Spike O'Sullivan, who's not the number one contender, who's not Gennady Golovkin's mandatory? Sergey is his mandatory. So why wouldn't he be fighting Sergey instead of Sullivan? I just explained why. Now, what makes this even more harder to understand, not only is Derenyevchenko a mandatory, but because he is the IBF mandatory, he's actually up next. Because you know, since Golovkin has multiple belts, he's the WBC champion, the WBA. Those belts, obviously the mandatory challengers, they take turns, right? So the last IBF mandatory that Golovkin faced was 2 years ago. That was against Dominic Wade. That's the reason why now Derenyevchenko is the number one mandatory challenger for Gennady Golovkin. So how does it make any sense that an opponent like Spike O'Sullivan gets to jump in the line in front of a Darren Yevchenko or the other #1 mandatory, Jermall Charlo? It's not adding up. And because of this is also causing a problem for Gennady Golovkin, because now Darren Yevchenko's people, Lou DiBella, which is his promoter, they're demanding that Golovkin either face the #1 contender or give up the belt. So even if this fight were to go on, there's a very good chance that Golovkin, if he doesn't fight his #1 IBF mandatory challenger, Darren Yevchenko, he risks being stripped of the IBF belt. And the problem with that, now some of you guys will say, hey, well, he has all them belts. He probably doesn't even care if he gets stripped. No, according to Golovkin, he is going to care. Why? Because Golovkin's goal, remember, his goal was to unify all of the belts at 160. So now, if he doesn't fight his mandatory, once again, a lot of pressure is on Golovkin. If he doesn't fight his mandatory, he may lose that belt. And that would contradict everything that Gennady Golovkin claimed he wanted to do at 160, which was to unify the belts. So Golovkin is in a tough situation right now. This fight may get canceled. If the fight goes on, Golovkin risks being stripped by the IBF. He has his WBC #1 mandatory, Jermall Charlo, on his ass. And according to Jermall Charlo's trainer, they told Jermall Charlo to wait until Golovkin fights Canelo in a rematch, and then he'll get a shot at Canelo or at Golovkin or whoever will fight. But the problem right there is now since Canelo has gotten suspended, we don't know how long that's going to be. But because of the politics in the sport of boxing, I'm sure something is going to get worked out to where they're going to try to bring Canelo back so they can still try to make this Golovkin versus Canelo rematch. But I don't see how Golovkin is going to be able to avoid his IBF mandatory challenger, Sergey Yevchenko, in May, and then avoid him again by facing Canelo in September. There's no way he could go that far without being stripped of the IBF title. We've seen fighters in the past get stripped way earlier than this. Okay? So once again, Golovkin's in a very, very tough situation, and I will not be surprised if they just go ahead and just cancel this fight completely. There is absolutely no way to justify Spike Sullivan as an opponent when you have a #1 mandatory challenger. And you have two of them at that. Let's see what happens.